Let's settle for the details now. It's only his second meeting with the media since coming into office a year ago. President Akufo-Addo's resolve in dealing with corruption is still as important as his presidency is to him. Today, he's vowed to effectively deal with corrupt officials, even those within his administration. Now, the Special Prosecutor's Office, he says, has been set up to put, quote, the fear of God in his appointees. We'll hear from the president shortly on what appears to have been a satisfactory performance for him in his first year as president of Ghana, plus expert analysis. We'll also get reactions from Ghanaians. Out on social media, we'll bring you what's popping on our handles. But President Akufo-Addo says he's largely satisfied with the work of his appointees, but he asked that any of them found to be corrupt will certainly face the music.
I've made it publicly known that anyone who has information about acts of corruption against any of my appointees should bring it forward and should be prepared to back it up with evidence. So far, every single act of alleged corruption labeled against any member of my administration has been or is in the process of being investigated by independent bodies, and the findings so far made public. From the allegations against the Minister for Energy designate at his parliamentary confirmation hearings, to that against the CEO of BOST, to those against the two deputy chiefs of staff, to the claims of extortion against the trade minister, and to those against the Minister for Special Development Initiatives, they have all been investigated, and no evidence has been adduced to suggest mildly the perpetration of any act of corruption. However, some people appear determined to stick to their politically motivated view that there has been corruption. This surely is not a helpful practice. It is important to note that in this, my first year of office, two separate bipartisan probes in Parliament have been established to inquire into allegations of corruption as against zero in the Mahama years, despite the persistent calls by the then minority. I have a greater interest in my appointees not being corrupt than any critic could possibly have. Try me. Produce the evidence to back the allegation and see what the reaction will be. Signed on January 2nd, the Act for the Establishment of the Special Prosecutor, Act 959. I have appointed Mr. Martin Amidu as the first person to hold that position. I'm well aware of the general sense of anxiety in the country and the strong feeling that politicians tend to get away with corrupt practices. A significant choice, though that Mr. Amidu is, I do not expect that he will provide all the answers, will deal with the phenomenon of corruption by public officials. But I do believe that at the least, the office will remove the fear of partisan prosecution and begin to put the fear of God in all public officials who are intending to go down the path of corruption. The current office holders are as likely to be investigated and prosecuted by the special prosecutor if a case is made out against them as past office holders. At all times, the rule of law must be adhered to.
The fear of God in public officials. Now, President Akufo-Addo also described as disgraceful the various acts of hooliganism that plagued his first year in office.
I should not omit from this accounting the disgraceful behavior of some members of my party, the New Patriotic Party, which has become known as vigilantism. I believe there is no longer any argument that criminal behavior wears no political colors and is solely to be dealt with by the police. I pray that we have seen the last of it. We're continuously working to ensure that it does not recur, that we uphold the rule of law.
So it certainly has been a very busy day for journalists throughout the country. We're going to have a very interesting conversation here. I have in the studio here with me, editor here at JoyNews, Israel Lai. Israel, it's good to have you.
Yeah, good to
you
be
all
here.
right?
Yeah, good.
Fantastic. And I also have here in the studio Jerry Sam. He is programs director with Pemplus by. They've put together what do you call it? The President's Promise Radar.
Yes, a citizens poll on. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's a citizens poll on perception.
On perception. Corruption. Okay, we'll deal with that. But before that, Israel, let's start with, you were there.
Yeah.
There was a striking difference between what happened previously, the encounter that the president has had previously, and what happened today. What I did notice was that there was very minimal, if you like, intervention from the ministers.
Well, probably because the president felt that he was capable enough
after a year, he's good enough
to handle all the issues that came up. So yeah.
But what was it that struck you?
What struck me was the fact that was the decision to bring in journalists from across the country, and there were journalists who came in from the regions, Kumasi and other parts of the country.
But that has quite been the practice, hasn't it?
I'm not sure, but if it has been, at least in this instance, they were giving an opportunity to ask questions. At least the information minister acknowledged them and made sure that they got an opportunity to ask a question. Indeed, what you tend to see is that you'd have some journalists coming in from Kumasi because Kumasi is close enough, but beyond Kumasi, you don't get people coming in from other parts.
Is it because Kumasi is close enough, or Kumasi is politically strategic to the administration?
I want to think that it's because it's close enough.
It's because it's close enough. Let me find out from you. Jerry, did you monitor it on TV?
Unfortunately, I could not watch it.
You listened?
I listened to bits of it.
Bits of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, I basically focused on areas that interested me.
Interested you?
And I was, my click away from it was President's interventions on the SDGs.
Okay.
Linking SDGs to development, and also look at innovation, which is going to use it for employment for the youth, and moreover also look at gender, which is very interesting as well. There's applicational institutes for girls, and make sure that the girls are also taken up on the development scale.
Interesting. We'll get into the details of the and look at the various topics that he spoke on. But Israel, did you? What is it for you that stood out in this encounter?
A few things. He talked about what they've done as far as procurement is concerned, and the fact that they've done a lot of work to ensure that you don't have a lot of sole sourcing being done, or we're not purchasing items through sole sourcing most of the time. And so that was one significant one. He also talked about the electricity tariffs and the fact that they were reducing the tariffs for non-residential. What I find curious is the fact that, which was a question I would have loved to ask the president, is why it is the president that is having to announce this, because clearly it's the PRC that should be announcing it. And so yes, but it's happened. It's something that they're working on. It hasn't yet happened, I must say. But that was another thing that stood out for me. I thought he also answered the questions. I mean, he stood on his feet and answered the questions.
Well, it wasn't that long.
Well, with a lot of not standing on his feet for that long, except that I thought you realized that he wasn't throwing the questions to his ministers. He was answering them by himself, and I thought that was also pretty.
But you did mention that you wanted to ask a question. What stopped you from asking your question?
Well, I mean, you raise your hand. It has to do with the information minister who's moderating, for him
to attract
the moderator.
Catch his eye.
I'm sure I caught his eye a number of times, but he probably didn't think that, or he maybe felt that there were others who had to be given the opportunity to ask questions, and they did. I had my own interaction with the president thereafter, actually.
Okay, what did you talk to him about?
So one of the things I brought up had to do with Donald Trump.
Okay.
And the tweet that he posted.
Right.
And I wanted to find out if he had gotten some feedback from him yet, from the US president. He said no, he hadn't had any feedback from me. And I asked him if he wanted to take it beyond, not even the US embassy. He said no. I asked him if he wanted to take it, he was going to leave it at that, or was going to go beyond that. And then he just said, are you expecting us to sever diplomatic relations with the US? And I said, oh no, that's
you certainly won't. You have very good reasons not to.
So yeah, I mean, that was the interaction we had. But I mean, generally he was asking how I'm doing and how my family is and all.
Interesting. Let's get to the the hardcore issues that were on the table today. And one of the most important ones, I'll say, is security. Recently, we've seen what's happening in Agogo. Very fluid situation there. Security analysts, of course, have warned us about how to deal with this. I'm going to start with you, Jerry, on this. How do you find his answer on terrorism? Some say it's quite generalized and not specific as to exactly the interventions that the Ghana security agencies are putting in place. Because let me just find out from you. What do you say to that?
Okay, so coming from the viewpoint that Nolisba had a briefing on the media encounter, I think it was very general and very specific, and it also has to do with our security agencies empowered to tackle situations like this. Are they trained to do it, and how do we get it? The social impact that these cattle raiders are having on the communities in these areas.
Now that's quite different from the general terrorism, dealing with terrorism, because he addressed those two differently, and rightly so. So let's deal with the issue about terrorism. It appears to me that we find it very abstract. We think that it's not that close to us, and I don't know if you agree with me on that, Israel. It appears very abstract, but for the recent grenade carriers who were arrested, people still don't seem to feel that it's close enough, and so we don't seem to be demanding the kind of answers that should put us at rest.
There's pretty little you can do when it comes to terrorism, because the security agencies, by the way they go about this, they're not going to be telling you what they're doing. And so a lot of the time, the intelligence they pick up and the way they manage the intelligence and all that, you won't get. Apparently, this recent arrest involving the 3 persons happened about 10 days ago, way before we got to know about it. And I'm told that the only reason why this thing came out was because it leaked on social media.
Someone leaked the information.
So once it leaked on social media, they were compelled to come out to talk about it. So things happen in the background that we are not aware when it comes to national security. And so we can only hope that they are doing what they are supposed to do to ensure that we are safe. And if the IGP tells us that we are safe, I want to believe that indeed we are safe. And my interactions with the security community also tells me that there's a lot going on. I've had the opportunity to visit the control room of the Ghana Police Service, where they have camera feeds coming in from across the country. There are about 1,000 cameras stationed all over the country that they are monitoring. National security also has access to these, and they are monitoring. There's a lot going on that we wouldn't know about until something happens, and then they can tell us. So we can only hope that indeed they're doing what it takes to keep us safe.
Okay, Israel, I'll come back. Right, I'll have to interrupt briefly. I'll come back to you in studio now, but we have Kojo Ponkrumah, the Deputy Minister for Information, on the line now. He's joining us live from the Flagstaff House. Yes, Kojo, thank you very much for your time here on The Pulse. And let me find out from you, I was just having a conversation with my panelists here about what stood out, what was different about, this encounter, comparing it to what we've seen in the past. And they're saying that it's what I said, that there's less intervention from the president's ministers. Was that a plan? Because a few people complained about their involvement the last time.
Well, Gifty, thank you, and good afternoon to your viewers. Interventions only come in when, for example, the president will call on a minister to provide some specific detail in response to a particular question. And that I really do not think is a minus from these press conferences. I recall President Akufo-Addo's days when he had the People's Assembly, and sometimes when he's done for a specific detail, he will call somebody to respond. In this instance,
a big improvement was the involvement of a lot more journalists from outside the Accra region. Had the opportunity to bring issues that are also germane to many parts of the country to bear on what the Cashew Marketing Board.
The Cashew Marketing Board and its issues in the Brong-Ahafo region, in the central region, for example, issues to do with agriculture and water and galamsey were significant to them as well. And so for me, it was good to have a number of those come in beyond sometimes the big issues that we talk about here in Accra, and believe that those are all.
Bring their issues to look to creating more opportunity for others who can maybe ferry their questions to other parts.
Right. So because we're not getting you in a very stable form as we would like, I'll just move on with the hardcore questions, Kojo. Let's talk about corruption. The president lists, basically seems to refer to the rhetoric that evidence is the name of the game. And we've seen how evidence is the name of the game has played out when it comes to dealing with corruption in various governments. Now he mentions the bust, he mentions the trade minister's cash for seat issue, he mentions the A+ allegations against his chiefs of staff, he mentions some of these and says that he is convinced that nothing untoward has happened within all of these. Is he not prejudicing Martin Amidu's work?
Of course not. A prosecutor for corruption and corruption-related offences. Today, what the president has said is that for these matters that have been brought up, not much evidence to galvanize these allegations have been put before him. And that's why he has not had basis to move it any further, or he's of the view that indeed these allegations that are not substantiated are the. If anybody has any evidence, I think it is proper, even as the special prosecutor is being appointed, to make that evidence available to the office of the special prosecutor, for example, or to some of the other investigative bodies, to Yoko Shraj, etc., as the president outlined. But I think that to the extent that for the allegations that have come up, he not having received evidence to back these allegations, even when he has asked for investigation, it is fair for him to comment on it as that. Some have suggested that his comments will even prejudice the ongoing parliamentary probe. It's a catch for seat scandal. But the president again has been clear that at the time he requested for information and was appraised of the information, he didn't find anything untoward. However, he even supports the parliamentary probe that is ongoing, even though he has already seen the evidence available and has come to this opinion. He supports that one, so that it will be put before the entire general public, live on television as well, done by another arm of government, different from the executive. So I don't think it's prejudice per se. To the extent that he's appraised of information, he's allowed to say what he has found and what is not found. But that does not stop other agencies, the Office of the Special Prosecutor, the same matters, and making their own determination.
Let's look at security and his position on whether or not Ghana is safe. He says Ghana is stable generally, but there's an issue about the Gitmo too. It appears that there's a bit of an inconsistency here. Now, the president says that a decision is yet to be taken. Yesterday, we've heard, not yesterday, I think, we've heard the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs indicates that a decision has already been taken and that it will be communicated at the appropriate time. What's accounting for this inconsistency?
Again, I don't think it's inconsistency. If you heard the president clearly, he used the word called, or he used the word active, that we are actively in the process currently.
That's quite different from saying a decision has already been taken, isn't it?
And I'm going to conjunct the two for you shortly.
Very well.
You know, for some of these things, when you are coming to the final point, you do a lot of
point.
Are all appraised and in line with you. So even though we are going through the motions, government is clear on where it desires to go, but government needs to bring everybody on board, get the buy-in of various stakeholders. And that's why the president says we are going through the process has been activated, and when we are done, we've given a timeline, or the president has given a timeline, that by the time Parliament resumes, he should be able to, through Parliament, inform the nation that this is the next step. So rather than picking at, words and suggesting that there's an inconsistency, I think the general way is that the direction is known to government. Like the president used the word, we are actively in that process, and once all of that is done, the nation will be afraid of where we are going next.
I know a few people who are quite disappointed in the response on the Fulani issue. The president says that a comprehensive policy is needed. Yes, we all know that a comprehensive policy is needed because we want to deal with this issue. He also mentioned that cattle ranches are to be set up to, especially in green areas, to deal with it. Some people have said that this is actually a suggestion that has been on the board for a very long time. Now, for the president to interact with the media on a historic moment like that, they expected a bit more. It appears that government hasn't really thought through the solution to this problem.
No, to say government hasn't thought through the solution to the problem will be a mischaracterization of things. There is a short-term challenge that needs to be addressed, and then there's a long-term solution. In the short term, certain might of force is required to, and I recall the statement that my ministry put out, a might of force is required currently to push back these nomadic herdsmen from the areas they have occupied, to also seek to arrest and prosecute those who were involved in the recent attacks on security agents. But in the long term, the answer is to bring a kraal or ranching system. If you go back to the statement that we issued, we mentioned that work has already started on that particular exercise, which will be put in full gear right on the back of the security operation. Now, today, the president mentioned that it was commenced in the Akufo administration. Unfortunately, it was not continued. It didn't see the light of day. But already, as he was speaking here, right where I'm standing today, there are efforts to build back those systems and even develop a couple more in other parts of the country.
What
so
are
it
the
is correct to say government has not properly thought through it. Government has thought through it, and action is already underway on that one.
Well, as I said, people were expecting a clear plan as to how to deal with it. But I want to hold you.
But give it quickly. That is the clear plan, and the plan, with a great of respect, will not necessarily change from what it is. That is the plan.
Where are they going? For example, where are the nomadic herdsmen going? They're moving from one place to another and going to perhaps create the same problem they've created in Agogo. Do we know where they're going?
Yes, they are going into the Abetifi area, where the first of the, I think it's in the, I don't quite recall the name of the district, but it's in the Abetifi area, where the first of the ranches is being put back together with the support of the military and the 48th Engineers Regiment. That's what the president was referring to. So that as we push back into that enclave, and then we do a couple more of that so that the problem doesn't keep it. So it's good for you to get your cameramen and your reporters to perhaps get on the ground and bring to the nation what work is being done.
Trust us to do so. Trust us to do so. But how does the presidency or government rate its performance on a scale of 100%?
The president said it right here that he would not be giving himself marks or grades. What we sought to do was to provide an opportunity for the president to outline broadly what he had done and to take questions and feedback, which is what happened here. In the areas where, in all honesty, we have lost track of a particular item, the president was honest to say, listen, on this particular matter, totally forgotten about it. As a minister on the beat, I'll get back to it. Areas where he had answers, he provided those answers. I think that this deepens our democracy, and we should build upon it.
Very well, Kojo, thank you so much for your time. Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah is Deputy Minister for Information. They're bringing us, some extra answers, if you like, a bit more information on what the president has said. I'm going to engage my panelists here to find out what they think about Kojo's further and better particulars. But before that, let's hear the president on Gitmo 2.
No detainees. The period is up. A decision has to be made as to, and that decision is under active. We need to be able to say something to the Parliament when it resumes, as to, because the period under which the agreement was brought has come to an end. We have to decide whether or not we're going to grant them permission to stay, whether we're going to make arrangements for them to go somewhere else. All those things are being actively examined as we sit. But I'm fully aware that a decision on them has to be made, and it cannot be made in 6 months or 5 months. It has to be made now.
A decision has to be made. I still stand by my position, by the way. I don't know what you think, Israel.
Well, let's just wait for the decision. What we're being told is that a decision has to be made. The deputy foreign minister says a decision has been made. So we're waiting for.
But what does the president say? I'm not quite sure that it's the same thing. What the president says and what the deputy minister for foreign affairs says.
They're not. They're not the same thing. Right. But what I'm saying is that what we know, or at least we should expect a decision or an announcement soon. Is
this enough for you? The way, president says this information, why do I keep saying information? Foreign affairs minister says that, and this is a serious situation.
At the end of the day, it's the outcome, the announcement. I'm just waiting for the announcement, whether they're staying or they're going.
Okay. Well, they will give it to the girls, like you put on your Twitter. Okay. You had a quick
yes, I was just going to say that
to put across.
Yeah, on the issue of terrorism, we worked with the police over the elections period. Okay. And then beyond elections, we were invited to a workshop where they are actually setting up the transformation office, and the police, are now going full ICT. Which is the way to go, right. And for them to have eyes everywhere. So it's not everything that is out there, but there's a whole new setup under the administration, which is called the Police Transformation Department, which is focusing mainly on ICTs. And I believe that when this is fully in place, where they are using, coming on social media, using all the new digital technologies available, they will have a hand on terrorism. Just that a lot of Ghanaians feel that we haven't really experienced it directly, so it's far from us. But then I believe the security agencies, we should believe them when they say they have a tab on it.
His answer on corruption, does it give you any peace?
Until the nomination of the special prosecutor, up until last year, we really did not feel that the government is doing that much in fighting corruption, and this was also reflected in the citizens' poll that were there.
Which you'll be taking us through pretty shortly.
Yes. So mainly what we see is government throwing bones at us to keep us at peace. That's, yes, they are, plans are far ahead, things are in the pipeline to be done, but then we haven't seen anything concrete until the NCA officers were arraigned before court. But then everything else has not really given us the confidence until appointments that they're nominated.
And I like to agree with him that until the appointment of Martin Amidu, or the nomination of Martin Amidu as special prosecutor, I was also of the view that probably there were things that were not being handled as well as they should have been handled, or were not exhausting the issues. So, but you can also give it to the president that he talks about the fact that there have been issues that have emerged, and his office or his presidency or his administration has allowed the establishment of two bipartisan parliamentary committees to look into these issues.
And at a point he tries to compare what has happened now and what happened in the previous administration. He says the speaker wouldn't even allow some of the motions to be...
And you may want to grant him that. I mean, if they really? wanted, if the president wanted to stop the parliamentary probe or frustrate the parliamentary probe, they could have, because they have the numbers, and they could have done that. Okay, but they have conceded and allowed this thing to go on. The issue, there have been things that have happened in the past. You take the boss issue. Right. I don't think that the boss issue was handled well enough. If you take there was one other, the A+ issue, you're still not sure how these things were handled. Now, but if you take the issue of what he said today about the CEO of Interplus, the chairman of Interplus, and the fact that he knows him personally, they've been friends for a really long time, and the fact that he eats in his home and all that, for me at that point, the claim that $100,000 was paid for seeds, it waters it down considerably, but it still leaves some inconsistencies in the story, which I'm hoping that at the end of this parliamentary probe, we'll get those answers cleared up.
And speaking of which, do you not agree with the position that to have the president go out, mention all these specific cases and say that he is convinced nothing wrong has happened will prejudice the work of Martin Amidu if Parliament approves of him or any other state agency whatsoever that would decide to look into these matters?
What he says does not matter so much to me as how I see the special prosecutor going about his business. I mean, knowing Martin Amidu, and from what we hear about him and his pedigree and his track record, the president can say whatever he wants to say. The president can whitewash anybody, and if Martin Amidu feels that there are some dark spots there, I believe that he's going to expose them.
Are we not putting so much of our hopes and our confidence in Martin Amidu? I mean, he's a human being. He's a human being, and even though we've seen his track record, he is still a human being.
He is a human being, but we have a lot of confidence in him. We have other human beings, but you look at the reaction, the public's reaction to the appointment of Martin Amidu, and it tells you volume. I mean, it tells you that indeed, yes, we have human beings, but there are others that have a lot more integrity than others.
That sounds like a debate topic. But anyway, let's hear.
It could be a debate topic.
It is a debate topic. Let's hear from the president on the cash for seat saga.
Any allegation that is made against any appointee of mine will be investigated. And that opens you up to having to investigate even the flimsiest and irresponsible allegations that are made. For instance, what is going on in the parliament now? The whole of a parliament is being recalled, and all the machinery of parliament cranked up to look into this cash for I don't know. The main figure, I'm showing this as an example, the main figure in the one who won the award. I'm showing this to indicate how also this issue of investigating everything can sometimes lead to the person who won the expatriate for the business person has been a client of mine for over 35, nearly 40 years. I'd be amazed if somebody like that, Said Fakri, will think that he needs to pay money to come and sit next to me. This is a man who can get me on the telephone any time of his choosing, who sees me, who comes to my house, and whose house I go to. But nevertheless, the accusation has been made, so it is being investigated. I see my part of the problem I have in this very broad commitment that I have made, can sometimes, but the genuineness, always the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We will see how the special prosecutor conducts himself. We will see whether investigations that are mounted and serious charges against people whom I've appointed, whether they are brushed under the carpet, or all of these things are matters that will unfold. And I think it's in an area whereby actions will speak louder than words. The importance that this administration is placing to that concept requires that a specific program of action be laid out before the Ghanaian people, and it will be laid very, very soon, to see specifically the steps that are required today, how we can reduce our dependence in our education and health budgets on foreign taxpayers' monies. All of those are things that we need to have concretized and spelt out in detail before the country. It will be done.
Okay, so you've had the president, and corruption is a big deal, obviously, because if we should quantify the amount that we lose in corruption, it will blow your mind as to the kinds of interventions that amount can make in our lives, making our lives better and lifting our poverty or our living standards. So Jerry Sam is going to take us through at Pemplus Bites. They've done a poll on perception of corruption. He's going to take us through that, and when we finish, we'll have a quick analysis on that. So Jerry, let's hear from you.
Okay, so we did a citizens poll on corruption to find a perception of what citizens think government is doing in implementing its manifesto promises on corruption. It's part of a project that we're doing called Metugu, which is basically to keep the pressure on government to deliver on its corruption promises, and at the same time to keep citizens aware of what government is doing. So we looked at 10 key corruption promises that was made. One of the major ones that government has fulfilled is that the president promised that within 14 days he's going to declare his assets, and that has been done. So that was scored at 100%. And then also on the issue of the appointment of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, government did very well on that one, which is 95%. So all the 5% remaining is where Parliament approves the nomination and he's appointed. But then significantly, government is not doing well in a lot of issues. So one of them, obviously, is the 21-year-old Right to Information Bill, which is now sitting a cabinet, not being passed. Also, the president promised that they're going to amend the Asset Declaration Act so that public officers will declare the assets, also to fight corruption. That also has not been done. And then also, government did well on the beneficial ownership, which is 50%. So now there's a beneficial ownership register set up at the Registrar General. So virtually, what we're waiting for is that this register will be made public for citizens to know about who owns what, who is behind certain organizations. Another zero also was that there was a promise that they're going to set up a DEX at the Auditor General to look at procurement, to do value for money auditing. That also has not been done. And then also there's a 90% score for president on SADA, and that has been done. He has signed, is signed to it. And then a key one, which is very interesting for Pemplus Bites, was that the government promised that they're going to set up an online platform which is linked to the Whistleblowers Act 60, so that citizens in the comfort of their home will share the experiences of corrupt acts that they've gone through, and nothing has been heard on that. So this is just a brief on the poll that has been done. And in the average, what we rated it was that citizens' perception on government's fight towards corruption is only at 45%. 45%,
that's certainly not a pass. 45% is a fail. But when you say beneficial ownership, explain that a bit more.
So beneficial ownership, basically, there are certain individuals who own certain organizations or are all funding certain companies that are benefiting from it, but then we don't know who those investors are. So beneficial ownership register, or to make it public, is to unveil these people or these organizations behind these investments or these organizations, so that we will know their linkages. If, for instance, they are linked to party financing, we will know how they got this contract. It's also linked to procurement. How come certain organizations are winning all contracts? Who is behind it? And this register is supposed to expose all of this. So it's very key in our fight towards corruption.
So government at 45% when it comes to fighting or dealing with corruption. Israel, I'm interested to know what you think about this.
The 45, I think it's fair. I mean, we can,
is it?
We can leave it at that, because there's...
Now, this has been given a major boost by the appointment of Martin Amidu, mind you.
It's still 45, isn't it?
Yes, so beyond appointing Martin Amidu, he's been appointed. He's not done anything yet. In fact, he's not even been approved yet.
Yeah, so it's okay. Let's let him work. Once we begin to see the benefits of this appointment or the fallout of this appointment, then we can say, well, yeah, something significant has happened.
Okay, what do you make of the Right to Information Bill, 0%? Now look at the speed with which the Special Prosecutor was appointed. Compare that to the speed with which the Right to Information Bill is
I'm not sure what the NPP had to say about the Right to Information Bill when they were in opposition.
We will pass it.
Well, a lot of work was done as far as the Right to Information Bill is concerned, and it had gotten to the point where it was supposed to have been passed. And so I'm not sure why the NPP would want to use it to say we're going to, pass, because at the time we're going into the election, it was supposed to have been passed. The only reason why it wasn't passed because they came together, the two major parties came together and decided that maybe let's hold on to it. Because the NDC could have gotten it passed, but they decided let's hold on to it. And so it looks like we're having to go through another cycle because this thing has to be laid all over again because there's a new parliament. But we're hoping that they probably may not have promised to pass it, but they will deal with it and deal with it as quickly as possible. It looks like for now they're dealing with the issues that they really promised that they were going to
do a list on the agenda. You have a quick intervention.
No, the right to information bill is in their manifesto to pass it within the first year of the administration.
Oh, they said it.
Yes, but a lot of these promises, there are actually no timelines to it. So we really can't tell when it's going to happen. But the right to information bill, for instance, was promised to be passed within the first year of the administration.
Within the first year, so that's certainly a field day.
Right.
I'll be engaging you a bit more, Jerry, so stay with me. But Israel will be leaving us. I'll also be joining the studio by political analyst Dr. Ali Seidu, who's with the University of Ghana. Israel, thank you so much.
Right.
So far, I mean, government is not willing to rate itself and its performance. But if I should ask you, where would you put them?
I would give them a 60.
A 60, that's 60. A pass.
No, yeah, and indeed, I'm looking at it this way. The MPP promised they made a number of promises before they came into power. And in the first year, a number of things have been done. They have delivered on quite a number of things. I wouldn't want to, and I heard the Deputy Chief of Staff on Joy FM this morning saying that what they've done is unprecedented. I wouldn't say unprecedented, but in the Fourth Republic, I'd say they have discharged themselves quite creditably, except we have issues, and we're expecting the issues to be dealt with. You also look at, I think it will also be unfair to compare them to the first year of the John Mahama administration.
So you mean basically to compare the periods? To
compare the periods, because during the first year of the John Mahama administration, they had to deal with the election petition. It took a long time, and at that time, it makes it really difficult for you.
8 months?
Yeah, it makes it difficult for you to actually take decisions because you're not even sure whether you end up,
whether you're president or
whether it's a president or you're having to deal with that. So, but yeah, I mean, they have done. I'll give them 60%.
You give them 60%. Israel, thank you so much for coming into the studio.
You. Enjoy your
Israel
show.
Was there. He was there, so, Israel Lai is editor here at JoyNews, and that is what Israel thinks. That's what Pen Plus Byte thinks. We'll be delving into the matter and doing some analysis. But what do the people on the street think? This is all about them, really. Let's hear from them.
To me, I would say the government has tried its best. If you consider holistically about the free senior higher education and then the youth employment issues, I can say he cannot do everything within 1 year. But so far as he's having good plans, even within this year, he's having a good plans concerned about the development of this nation. I think all of us have to support him so that we'll be able to achieve his plans and ideas and the targets concerned about the development of this nation.
Yeah, for me, so far so good because I think 1 year is not enough to assess a government. But then, as we all know, when a new political party comes into power, they have to settle down. So for me, I think the 1 year, that's what they use almost 2 to 3 months to appoint ministers and who assume office. They have to settle down in their various ministries and to start work. So for me, as I said earlier on, so far so good.
But normal, it's cool, at least manageable. I wanted to tell the government if he can plead with our people who are having, let me say, our landladies and our landlords. Because nowadays, okay, for me, I don't know, but for me, I see rent to be too expensive. Yeah, because I'm a very young girl who wants to start a life now, and I want to rent a room. I'll go like 2 years, 24-something million. I'm not having.
So far, so good, especially the free education. I think some of the parents are free now. And it's making them feel good because their children are at school. Whether you have or you don't have, your children is going to school. So I think so far it's good.
pertaining the situation in the country, I don't think it's any better. It amounts to the same thing, and it's all amounts to deceit and all that. They come up with better policies. I think maybe when they are in the opposition, they have better agenda for the country. But when they come, they are probably pertained by the greed and the money in the country. So I don't think it's been any better. But hopefully, a year of 4, it's probably 1/4 of it. So I think they have a long way to go, and we're hoping they bring up good things. Like the policies they implement, they made up, like the policies they have, if they are able to implement it, I think it's going to be better for the country. That's what we're looking for. But for now, because especially youth unemployment and all that, we're all graduates and we're all home. It's bad. We need something. We need a policy that's going to elevate us from all that.
I think it's cool and we should manage him, that's all. Yeah.
So far, so good. Maybe just need to be a little faster about some of his policies, especially the Straight One factory, because that's the main objective in the manifesto. Understand? And he bringing on the special prosecutor. That's thumbs up for him.
What I would say is so far so good. If I look at the free senior high and then the stopping of the galamsey and stuff, he's on course. Let's give him some time, let's say 2 years before we can jump into conclusion. But for now, it's too early to say anything. But so far, so good.
Yeah, for me, they do something better. They do the school, they say they do prepaid, everything. I think God give us strength to do it.
So those are voices on the streets there. It looks as if free SHS wins in every discussion. Everywhere you everywhere you try to assess the performance of the government, it appears that free SHS always comes on top. Well, something that is basically recycle of politicians and their deceit, but they think that this government does have some great policies that if they're able to implement, lives will be better. I've been joined in the studio, as I promised you, by Dr. Alidu Seidu. He's senior lecturer at the Political Science Department of the University of Ghana. Dr. Alidu, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
It's good to have you.
Yes, please.
I believe you've been listening so far.
Yes, please.
So what are your initial thoughts? What's your reaction to what the president, the encounter today?
I think it's one of the basic principles of good governance, accountability.
Okay.
And one way you can account is to be very transparent about some of the things that you promised to do, some of the things that you have done, how far you have done them, and how far you think you can go with it. So I think the president just wanted to let the Ghanaian citizens know that this is how far we have come in relation to the promises that we have made. These are the possible challenges that we face, and moving forward, this is where we want to go to. So once we get this kind of information, it has a whole lot of effect on the way the media work, on the way civil society work, on the way our donor partners relate to the state, and all those things. If you are not very transparent about the governance process, it leaves a lot of room for speculations and doubts. And once people begin to speculate and doubt what you are doing, it has a whole lot of effect on the general good governance temperature in the country. So I think it's a very good thing. The whole process is good. But as to whether what he has said is what is the exact truth or not, that's another thing.
Exact truth or not. Well, they say truth is eternal. But before we even go into what he said today, we've seen, just before you joined us, Jerry here was taking us through the work that Pamphlet Bite has done, what they're calling the corruption perception. They put together the promises that the government or the NPP at the time made to the people of Ghana, and what they've achieved, what they've not achieved, and sum it all up. They say they're giving the government 45%. That's certainly not a pass. But I'm wondering what you think of it. I don't know if you weren't here, but I'm going to have Jerry go through this again. Jerry, quickly, so that we can have Dr. Alidu comment on this poll.
So we actually looked at, we concentrated on corruption promises. So we looked at 10 key corruption promises that the government made that they're going to deliver. So one of the major ones was to pass the Right to Information Bill within 1 year, to amend the Access Declaration Act, to set up set up a minister for procurement, also to look at SADA, and then asset declaration from the presidency itself,
right,
and then also the Beneficial Ownership Act as well. And then also they wanted to improve the Whistleblowers Act by setting up an online platform that will let people report and basically make corruption risky for individuals to, partake in it.
Okay, so put all this together. Special prosecutor, they're scoring the presidency 95%, of course, because there's the appointment of the independent special prosecutor pending parliamentary approval. The online platform for the whistleblowers, 0%, obviously. Asset declaration, the presidency, they've given him, did you give him 100% that
yes,
he's
because
declared
he declared
his
it within the 14 days that he promised.
But is it in the public domain?
No, that's the other challenge as well.
So where do you put him again at that, I think 50%?
So no, because he declared the assets, we gave him 100% on that.
But there was something else about assets.
So the assets was also to make public officials declare their assets.
Declare. That he has not been able to do.
As well. That has not
been done. So
there's no amendment. It was supposed to amend the act to make it obligatory. As it is now, you can declare the assets, but then the register is just kept
in secret. No one knows what has been declared. Okay. So Right to Information Bill, obviously 0. Nothing has been done. Let me take your views on that, Dr.
I think fighting corruption is a very difficult thing to do. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it takes a whole lot of things. And I'm very glad that my good friend and his organizations has been able to do this. Everybody is focused on the office of the special prosecutor. That's the spearhead.
I guess maybe because it's new. It's something that happened last week.
Not new. It may be the name, but I think they've been state institutions that have been given that element of power to some extent to also deal with corruption. But the whole incident is, it takes several laws for the office of the special prosecutor to work, including the Right to Information Bill and all these things that they have listed. These are the things that's going to support him to work.
Okay.
So establishing the office and then appointing somebody subject to parliamentary approval, I think it's like 50. I think they have even been generous giving them 90. No, that doesn't mean corruption. We haven't seen anything yet.
Okay, no, but
the way he is going to work.
They listed it as the promise, the promise to establish the office of the special prosecutor.
Okay.
Now, there's been a lot of processes.
Okay.
We're at a point where the prosecutor has been appointed. Pending approval.
If you still ask me, I would still think that is 50.
It's still 50.
That is half of the work.
Right.
Once Parliament approves him and he's now in office, that is half of the work.
Does it mean that you don't have confidence in
that's not what I'm saying.
Ability?
Even if you bring God to fight corruption in this country, he will need a lot of support and a lot of variables to help him do that. People have applauded Martin Amido's credibility and his ability. I agree that he has all these fantastic qualities. But without the support of legislations and people, a whole lot of things, it will be very difficult. Look, he needs information. He needs people to be able to give him the whistleblower right to a whole lot of things will have to push him.
So you can still set up the office of the special prosecutor, but if the things that he needs aren't available, he will still fail.
He can't deliver.
But well, we've seen what Martin Amido has done single-handedly, alone, independently.
Yes, he was doing that as an individual. But this one, he's within an institution. And that institution brings its own constraints, institutional constraints. Right? If we don't enable those particular constraints, it will be very difficult for him to work.
Okay.
I think he's the best person for the job. But he needs a lot of support. Other than that, it's not going to be very easy for him.
I see. All right. Well,
if I can just add to
please
that,
do, and then we wrap up on that particular bit of the
I mean, I agree with a lot of the things that he said, but we have to also give government credits in some of their interventions. Earlier on, I said that, yes, there's some of the things that they are doing. It's more like throwing bones at us to keep us at bay. But then also, government must...
Is the special prosecutor's appointment one of those? That's a big bone.
It's a very
It was trending 10 minutes. 10 minutes after the announcement, it was trending number one.
As well. But what we need to mention is that in the past, governments have taken such interventions and not consulted. But there was wide consultation in actually developing the bill and passing the act. Civil society were always engaged in its implementation. And then also, we must also credit the government that they have resourced a lot of the investigative arms to fight corruption. So
have they?
Yes, for the first time, Yoko, they are getting their money, Shraj, they are getting their money. But then what also we need to add is that the key promise that they added, that they were going to actually help set up a procurement unit within the Auditor General's office, which we haven't heard anything about. I'm sure a lot of Ghanaians also did not know about this, even though it's in their manifesto. Will help a lot, because one of the key things that we wanted to look at was to look at procurements and to see whether public procurements have value for money in it. Okay. And also to go back to previous ones that have been done, so that the Auditor General will have that speciality in addressing procurement issues, because we know a lot of our corruption.
Well, there's a minister in charge. There's a minister of state in charge of procurement.
Which is why we actually score the procurement bit at 50%.
50%.
And even now, government is doing well in actually getting the procurement authority to publish bulletins of procurement that has been done. It's still 1 year, so we haven't seen that many of this being done. But as of now, even when you go, even with all this, you can't even match how much soul sourcing has been done last year compared to 2016.
It comes back to the right to information, perhaps, that if we need some of these things, if you want to get information on that you need the right information, for example, to compel these agencies to give you that information, because, I mean, they're not putting it out there anyway. But Dr. Lidu, let me wrap up this conversation. We're going to start talking a bit about security. It's something we've tackled already, but it's interesting. I'd like to take your views on that. But when we talk about corruption, I think that one of the important things that we need to do is to link it to the lives of people. How does it improve the lives of people? I mean, when we deal with corruption, the rippling effect on people, on the living standards of people, poverty level, dealing with poverty levels, etc. If you listen to the president, do you feel that we are focusing more on the corruption as it is, the money we're losing perhaps, without necessarily linking it to the effect that it has on the people? Do you get the sense that the president actually dealt with the effect it is having on people's social issues?
But I think broadly we are all talking about corruption because it has a whole lot of effect on one, growth, general growth of the country, on two, the livelihood and welfare of the people, and even three, the provision of social and basic amenities and all those things. It's a huge thing. The amount of money that we can use to address most of these developmental challenges that we face is actually taken by one or two or few people who keep it for their own uptake, not just for their personal short-term lifestyle, but I think for the rest of their lives. Some of the monies that they take for it's not even for himself, for his entire generation.
Because even if they go to jail,
yet unborn.
Yes, even if they go to jail, the money will be there for their children to come and spend.
50 years and come, and then the money will still be there. If we free this particular, if you just look at the amount of money that the government is able to spend to provide free senior high school, if you're able to free some of the monies that is spent on corruption, government can do better than that. Not just free, but there are a whole lot of other interventions that once government is able to handle them. For example, look at education. Education has a whole lot of trigger effect. It has impact on security, impact on human rights, impact on health, impact building human resource, quality human resource to be able to contribute to development. It has a whole lot of effect. So if you deny people education just because 2 or 3 people have been able to take half of the money that was supposed to be, you can see the harm that they are doing to the greater general population.
I just wanted you to emphasize that so that whoever is following the discussion will bear that in mind as well. When we talk about corruption, it's all about the rippling effects that it has on society. Let's move from corruption and talk about security. We've dealt a bit with that, but I'd like to take Dr. Ali Seidu's views on that. It's a big deal. Let's hear the president now.
Terrorism, I think my understanding is, and I think that's the reality for all of us, is something that is menacing all the countries of the world. We've known about outbreaks of terrorism in places far away, but also places very close to us. In Côte d'Ivoire, we saw the effort in Bassam. We've seen the outbreak of terrorist incidents in Burkina Faso. We know also about the movement of jihadist forces in northern Mali and in the Sahel region. Ghana in principle, cannot be exempt as a potential target. So the security preparedness of our country is an extremely important matter. I can hope that the efforts that are being made by the security agencies to keep a tag on potential targets, potential authors of terrorism, like, for instance, the arrests that have been made, that the security agencies in our country continue to show that level of alertedness that would enable them to nip some of these things in the bud. But I think that as far as our state is compared, especially to many of the states in our region, so far so good on our part. But it is an area where we can never ever let our guards down, and we will have to continue to do all those things, sharing intelligence with others, beefing up our own capability. Also, of course, dealing with some of the more long-term causes in terms of, once again, economic development, employment of young people, rather than having a lot of idle young people on our hands. It's a comprehensive approach that we have to make. But I think that Ghana is stable, Ghana is secure, Ghana is safe, and I'm certainly going to do everything I can to make sure that that reality of Ghana continues. The equipment, the logistics of resources that the agencies need to work with, we're doing our best to make sure that they have it, and generally sharpen their capability. But I think that the effort that the police have mounted in the last few days shows that they are indeed on the alert and that they are capable of giving us the protection that we all seek. It is important that we devise a comprehensive proposal to be able to deal with the matter, not just the firefighting as you're talking about. But it is important. But once you're devising methods of how the cattle can be maintained and properly quarantined and looked after, that also the pure law and order measures that need to be taken to prevent violence, to make sure that the herdsmen behave within the context of the law in Ghana. We cannot overlook that. And that will have to continue until we get from them consistently behavior that it goes along with respecting the laws of the country. But the other thing, there are matters which we all need to look at. I mean, if you have a very effective system of ranching across the country, are you thereby also inviting all the cattle of West Africa to head towards Ghana? Because you have a system that perhaps, I mean, these are, and it's part of the thinking that is going on to be able for us to find a solution. So, yes, I agree. It is time for us to be able to unveil a comprehensive resolution of this matter and not to continue just to depend on the law enforcement aspect of it, but to deal in a more holistic manner with the issue of these cattle that are ranging across various parts of our country.
So generally, the president says that the country is stable, and he mentions all of the things that he believes actually that the security agencies are doing their best to keep the country, or to keep the security situation in the country under control. But not so long ago, I spoke to the second deputy Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin. Here are his thoughts on the state of security in this country.
Ghana is not safe now. There's no peace. And what Kofi Kumsin said some years ago is playing out. You understand? And His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo should sit up and take immediate action. Very important. When he was criticizing 84 people as ministers and deputy ministers, we thought he was going to go below that. 110? Who has ever been able to control a mob? That is a mob government. And I'm not surprised that there is this phrase, I am not aware of it. You cannot be aware of it. How can you be aware of the actions of every member of a mob? 110 is completely unacceptable and must be condemned in no uncertain terms.
Is it not too early to do that? Allow them to do the term, and then you judge them based on their experience.
Allow that mob to do the damage before you judge. 110. You have only 4 years. Don't forget that. You have only 4 years. I mean, was it even necessary? It gave an indication, and I've stated this before, that he's not in control. He was pushed into taking those decisions.
What makes you think so?
Clearly, knowing Nana and knowing who he is, what else would I have come to?
Knowing him, he wouldn't have.
He wouldn't on
have
his own have done that. So what happened?
Who is pushing him?
Definitely, it's a pressure from his party. Where else? It's a pressure from his party. And it first depends on how he conducted himself throughout as a leader of that group and what commitments he gave to them, you know, whatever agreements he entered with them. Are you not surprised that the president that will give him the whole authority, the authority of the nation, will go before churches and plead with them to assist him to control his own boys, call invisible forces, Delta forces, who just yesterday convened a meeting at the Tamal Sports Stadium to declare that they, the leadership, have told the police to be aware that they are in existence and they should not touch them. I mean, can we continue this way as a country?
Alban Bagman there, and if that interview should have played further, he says that the president should sack the IGP. If he was president, he says he would have sacked the IGP because he believes that he has not been able to keep the people under control and secure the nation as well as he should. Your thoughts? Let me start with you. Okay, well, Dr. Alidu is a newest person. We've already had this conversation when Israel was around. Dr. Alidu, what are your thoughts?
Is it on the president's statement or both?
On security. So we're dealing with security in the country. That is what the president says. He's assuring us. This is what Alban Bagwin thinks. I don't know where you stand on this.
So in general, from the president's perspective, all the good interventions that government is putting out, without stability and security, it will not work.
He says the country is stable.
That's the first thing. You see, when you look at stability or violence, one of the renowned founders of the discipline of peace studies, Professor Johan Galton, talks about 3 types of violence, 3 kinds. What he called the direct, the structural, and then the cultural. Usually, we pay so much attention to the direct form. That is people killing each other, people shooting, there is a bomb and all those things. That's what we focus so much attention to. And that is what ISIS and all those people do. They'll plant a bomb somewhere, they'll go to a mall and shoot. And that's what we are all paying attention to. If you look at security from that perspective, Ghana is relatively stable. But when you move beyond that and you look at the second kind of violence called structural violence, Johan Galton talks about it as one of the most dangerous forms of violence. We are not fighting. Nobody's waging war. Nobody's doing. But technically, we are not peaceful. It's about taking all the impediments, institutional impediments, legal impediments, so that people can live a cherished, value-free life. If you go to work and you are discriminated against, if you are abused, if there are structural, legal, deformities, that makes people not able to realize their goal and their ability, provide for their, achieve their welfare and their well-being, then technically you are not peaceful. So if you look at it from this particular perspective, it captures what the Honorable Bagman is saying.
Are you not at peace in this country yourself?
Directly.
You are?
No, directly we are peaceful. In the sense of direct peace, we are peaceful. But in the sense of what? Structural violence, we are not. So if you look at this classification, cultural, direct, structural, leads to Johan Galton talking about 2 major types of peace. What he called positive peace and then negative peace.
Okay.
Ghana is negatively peaceful, not positively peaceful.
I see.
Because directly we are not. What's happening in Syria, in Somalia, and other places, it's not happening in Ghana. That is negative peace. But if we move beyond that, we have positive peace.
Okay.
That is what we are lacking now.
What should we do? you think?
I think it has to do with a whole lot of things. In the academic literature, people say positive peace is utopian, it's futuristic. But you have to build institutions up to the level that you get to that particular point. So if you pick the US, for example, negatively they are peaceful. But you go to this school or club, you don't know what will happen. The next day they're shooting. That is a serious mark of what? Structural violence. And a structural violence has to do even with legislation. Government delaying or inability to enact a law that will help people live a better life. A whole lot of things.
I see.
So I think one, strengthening legislation, also providing for the welfare and well-being of the people, making sure that all legal and other impediments that blocks people's ability to realize their potential, to utilize their capacity and ability to get what they want to get, to live the kind of cherished life that they want to live, all constitute what? Acts of structural violence. And our ability to take all this out will now make Ghana a more positive, peaceful place.
Peaceful place. Okay. Let me take your brief comments on that.
I will still, to a large extent, agree with Doc about the negative piece. And I'll still go down to one of the reasons why we focused on corruption, which is mainly has so many ripple effects.
It's a structural violence.
Correct.
It is.
Yes. Corruption is
it can be constituted as such.
Yes.
Right.
So, for instance, if I'm going to look for a job, which I'm clearly qualified for, and I'm a lady, then I have to have sex before I have that job, then that can bring out, certain unpeaceful nature in that person, or that happiness in that person.
Okay, so I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. How would having sex for work, having sex for a job, I mean, how would having sex for a job amount to
I mean, just that was just one example. But then if the youth are not given these opportunities because of corruption, because of corruption, money is being diverted to one person's pocket, which just money could have provided jobs, and this youth can have gainful employment. Then they won't go into armed robbery, for instance, or they won't engage in mob activities, or won't have even vigilantes having time on their hands. Doing all the damage that they are causing in society. So that's one of the main reasons why we're focusing on corruption.
Even if you look at the typology that I gave, even Johan got on the cultural violence, do you know what it is? The justification that we provide for our inability to make society right is a form of violence. Because the justification breeds inaction, and inaction is not going to lead you to a positive place.
Because you have reasons.
Definitely. So, for example, people go at that place, so, because there's no job, that's why vigilante people are.
Or because we work for the party.
Yes, that is a pure justification for inaction.
And that's
which in itself is dangerous.
Sort of violence.
Yes.
Okay, now we need to wrap up this conversation, but I want to find out from you. I had wanted for us to speak about Ghana Beyond Aid, because there was a question about how. Because the president has kept saying, keeps saying, Ghana Beyond Aid, but we know that we're still taking donations. We know that even in some places, there are sectors of society that's suffering because donor funding has stopped. So Ghana Beyond Aid, people wanted to find out what is the clear plan for Ghana Beyond Aid. I don't know if you heard the president's answer on that, but he mentioned that we need to mobilize the revenue, we need to have the institutional framework, we need to have a plan, and that plan will be made available. And they left people asking, well, you've been saying this for the past 1 year now, there was no plan? I'm wondering, is that the same feeling you got, or you have a different explanation?
I think it's a very good thing to do, but it takes a lot of time.
Okay.
Honestly speaking, you see, revenue mobilization is one, fighting corruption is another, but more important, closing the loopholes in the system. Ghana is a very rich country, and we have enough to be self-independent. Once we keep taking these freebies, we become pawn in the international system. You are not sovereign. You can't take decisions that genuinely represent the interests of the country, because somebody will tell you that if you do this, then I'm going to do that. If you do this, I'm going to do that. But seriously speaking, the amount of money they give to us every year, whether it's annual support or whatever support, once we are able to do all these things the president is talking about, we can even give it to other countries. Okay. We have that capacity.
Okay. Jerry, with you, I'm going to find out from you, were there any areas that you expected the president to touch on? I mean, what areas are are you most passionate about, pen plus bite, passionate about that you would have expected a bit more on?
So the president touched on the SDG 9 about using the ICTs, which he said that is going to get the youth more involved in innovations to create jobs. We wanted him to go further on that, on government's own interventions in using ICTs as a foothold or a foundation to propel us in industrialization, to create jobs, and also to fight security as well. We wanted more details on how President intend to use. Yes, indeed, we've gone paperless at the port, which has its own challenges. But then, what other interventions does the governments have in place to explore what ICT has in store for us?
Very well, Dr. Amidu, Dr. Alidu, Dr. Alidu, your own expectations. So we've just seen a year end, but 3 years more for the president. Yeah, what are your expectations going forward?
I think the government has made very bold initiatives within the 1 year. What I expect them to do within the next 3 years is to consolidate and sustain those ideas. Because you can, if you plant a seed, you don't water it, you don't put all the ingredients that's needed to make it grow, it's not going to grow. So the ideas we've sent it, fantastic ideas. They have started, most of them. Most of the initiatives have been started. But for how long? Is it just going to die a premature death? Or is going to be sustained? So then for the next 3 years, I want to see mechanisms, strategies, policies, ideas, innovations that will sustain these ideas that the president has planted. And once we allow them to grow, then we're going to have a very better place to live in.
Hopefully so. We all want a better place to live in. Your rate, if your ratings, if you should put them on a scale of 100%.
Everything they've done so far.
Yes.
I think they've just begun. So if I'm going to look at what they have started, I think maybe I'll give them. I think they've done well.
You're a lecturer. You're a lecturer. You're giving people marks every day. Give them a mark.
Before it has to be informed by a survey, a scientific procedure.
I see you're running away from it, but I give that to you. All right, but I've been having this conversation with Dr. Alidu Seidu, Senior Lecturer, Political Science Department at the University of Ghana, and of course, Programs Director at Pen Plus Bite, Jerry. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much, Doc, for coming as well. Well, it's a long 3 years ahead of the government. It might seem long, but it's actually very short. We'll be here to measure the interventions. Whether or not, at the end of it all, we can say that our lives have been better, whether we can improve upon our living standards, whether or not people won't call us names that are quite unpalatable.